Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So in today's video I'm going to be making a tier list of all the heroes that are available in Battlegrounds. You guys know I've been enjoying it a lot. I'm currently at 7.5k MMR, which is about 500 outside the top 200 on EU. So I've got quite a lot of experience with these heroes, but you know, it's going to be open to interpretation. Everyone's got their favourites, etc. And I want to say before we start, look, you can win Battlegrounds with any one of these heroes. There's a lot of RNG involved, one with the tavern phase when you're picking minions, and also in the actual battle phase, depending on who you fight, how many times you fight the people, when they've spiked. Then there's the RNG of which minions attack which minions, etc. So Battlegrounds is about being consistently trying to get into the top 4. So I'll be basing a lot of my analysis on that. So let's start looking at the heroes. We're going to start with the easiest one, and that is Lordjaraxxus. And I think Lordjaraxxus is the easiest because he is the best. Just kidding, he is the worst. Don't pick Jaraxxus if you see him. Yes, his effect's quite nice. 2 mana to give demons +1/+1, all of your demons +1/+1. So if you have a demon board, it's actually pretty good. But the problem is 2 mana is quite expensive, and I really don't like heroes which funnel you into a certain tribe. So demons in specifically aren't that great. They did get a recent buff, but Lordjaraxxus I just don't think is worth it because most of the time you just won't get demons. And even if you do get offered some early demons, there's no guarantee that there'll be some mid-game demons that you get hold of. And once you get all of that and you get to late game, demons can get beaten by other tribes anyway. So really I don't think Jaraxxus is worth picking. So that's why I've put him as one of the worst heroes. So one to avoid definitely. Now let's look at the second easiest one, or maybe even the easiest one. It is Rafarm. He is the new hero. His hero power is 1 mana. It's called I'll Take That, and basically the first minion on your opponent's side of the board to die gets added to your hand in that combat. So this only costs 1 mana to recruit a minion. Now the minion you recruit is kind of random because you never know which one's going to die first, and it's from your opponent's board, so it might not synergize. But it's 1 gold to recruit a minion, and often your opponent will only be putting good minions on the board because that's what they want. So you'll be getting a good minion. And, the first minion that dies is often quite a good one. King McGurgle will always be the first one to die because they want to buff their board. So you can get a free King McGurgle, one gold King McGurgle. Same with Spawn and the Zoth early game. That's very good. If you can get 3 of those and get a gold one, that sets you off for the mid game towards the late game already. Cave Hydras usually attack first. People often attack with Light Fangs first to break Divine Shields. So when that dies, you get free Light Fangs. So yeah, Rafarm is very strong. His hero power really impacts your company early because you can recruit minions and get a big board early. And I think he's brilliant. So he is actually going to go into the S category on his own because I think he is excellent. Next, let's take a look at AFK. Now, AFK did recently get a nerf. She was one of the better heroes when Battlegrounds first came out, often seen as the best. I think she's come down a lot since then, and the recent nerf has actually hit her quite hard. So the nerf now is that instead of getting on turn 3, you pass your first 2 turns. On turn 3, instead of getting a tier 4 minion and a tier 3 minion, you only get 2 tier 3 minions. So it is quite a big nerf to AFK. She does, however, it can be good if you get the Cobalt Guardian, for example. That's a really strong minion to get early, but you need to have another mech with it to give it Divine Shield. So AFK is kind of a bit hit or miss. Still a good pick if you haven't got any other good ones to pick, but I'm going to put her in the C category because that's where I see her going at the moment. Next, we've got Vancleef, another new hero, and he is another good one, honestly. Vancleef's hero power is give a minion +1/+1 for each minion you've bought this turn. So, early game you might buy 1 or 2 minions and then you can give a minion +2/+2. It's pretty strong just for 1 mana, and you can pick whichever minion as well. If it was random, I think this would be a little bit more fair, but because you can actually pick which minion you give +2/+2, it can really, really help buff your amalgams. Really good for Cave Hydra because Cave Hydra is a minion that's one of the better minions in the game. But it's quite hard to buff it because, there's a beast buff that gives it taunt with the Houndmaster, but you don't really want to taunt your Hydra, so you're relying on the other one that gives it +2/+2, or a Light Fang to buff it. So I think Vancleef is very strong. His hero power really helps to build your board early. It's inexpensive, just 1 gold, and it's not hard to activate because you always want to buy minions. So Vancleef is a very strong hero. Not quite as good as Rafam, I would say, but you know, it's very close between the two. So I'm going to put him in the A category. Next, we've got Toki, and Toki again was very strong originally, but did receive a nerf a couple of patches back. Her hero power now costs 2 mana and adds a minion from the tavern tier up to your to Bob's Tavern. So that is quite a nice effect. It's pretty cool, especially when you're at tier 4. Just guaranteeing a 5 every turn is pretty cool because there are a lot of strong 5s. There's Lightfang, there's King McGurgle, there's Bran. All 3 of those are really good game-winning minions that you want. But the problem is, it costs 2 mana to do it. It doesn't help you in the early game. It's not very strong. Like if you're spending 2 gold on turn 3 or 4, you're just wasting it, to be honest, just to get higher minions. So Toki, unfortunately, has come down in the list since the game first launched, and actually isn't one of the better heroes in my opinion. Again, still has some strong possibilities, but for me, she goes down in the D category. Next, we've got another kind of weak one. This is Queen Wagtoggle, and I do like playing her because the hero power is only 1 mana, or 1 gold, I should say. So it's very cheap, and it buffs 4 minions if you've got them. So it buffs it 4 different tribes, gives them +1 health. And giving it minions health is good. If you're going a menagerie build and you spend 1 gold to give 4 health across 4 minions, it feels quite good. The problem is it doesn't help you early game very much. Because it takes a while to get the menagerie build going. And if you're going for that build, you've got a Lightfang, which is already buffing those minions anyway. So this is just nice on top. But to be honest, I don't think it makes that much difference. If by the end of the game you've pressed this hero power 6 or 7 times, that's quite a lot. You're buffing 6 or 7 health on 4 minions, that's maximum. So, but by that time, if you haven't got a Lightfang, that's not going to make a difference, that health. And if you have got Lightfang, their health is probably high enough anyway. You don't really need this. And I think it's better to invest the gold in rolls or buying minions. So, to be honest, she's not a very good one. Maybe in the future it'd be good. I just don't think, when you've gone a menagerie build, I just don't think having this hero power really is worth it. So Queen Wagtoggle, unfortunately, is a bottom tier minion for me. Next, we've got the Curator, and this is actually my favourite hero, I think. I don't really know why, I just really like starting with a 1/1 Amalgam. I mean, it's very strong in the game, obviously, but it just feels so good to have one that you can constantly buff, especially if you start with the Murloc Tidehunter, where you can just, or the Rockpool Murloc that can buff it +1/+1. If you start with that on turn 1, you're flying. So this is really cool. It sets you down, it funnels you a little bit down a certain strategy because you kind of want to go for a buff strategy, but let's be honest, any build in the game can have an Amalgam in it. If you go Murlocs, Amalgam's great. If you go Menagerie, Amalgam's pretty much essential because you know you can give it Divine Shield and Poisonous that you can't do to all the other tribes. So that's really good. And if you go Mechs, he's worth it. So I really like this one. Sometimes it can fail because in the early game, it's only just +1/+1 stats to your board, right? It doesn't give you anything huge. So if you don't roll any buff minions or you don't, then it doesn't really add a lot to you early game. But honestly, most of the time you do roll those minions, and buffing him can be quite cool. So I like the Curator a lot, and I'm going to put him near the top. So let's put him next to Vancleef there in the A category. Next, we've got Patches, and well, it's actually called Patchwork, and he is a lot worse now. He's been nerfed, I would say. He used to be 60 health, and now he's 50. The effect of having extra health is brilliant because it helps you to kind of survive the rough patches in the game. If you haven't rolled good minions early on, then it can help you to survive just that little bit longer until you do get the synergies you want. If you have rolled really well though, and you're getting nice minions and you're getting a strong board, then it's just 10 extra bonus health, so it's pretty nice. But it doesn't impact the board. That's the problem. And now that it's a 10 health nerf to this, it's pretty high. So since the nerf, I'm going to bring him down, to be honest. So Patchwork, I think, although it's still a pretty solid choice, at certain times, I think I have to put him down here. I mean, he's definitely better than Toki. But because he doesn't impact the board early game, other than giving you a bit more survivability, I'm going to have to put him down here. Next is George, and George is a very difficult one to rate because he's one of the best heroes in the game, but also one of the worst heroes in the game. And I'll explain that because if you get into the top 4 and you're George and Nefarian's not in the top 4 with you, George is so good because giving Divine Shield to minions that can't get Divine Shield is amazing. Even giving Divine Shield to minions that can get Divine Shield is also really powerful because sometimes you don't roll the Annoy module or something to give it to your mechs or your amalgams. So he's got a very strong effect. It costs 4 mana, so it's very expensive. But at the late stages of the game, 4 mana is not a high price to pay for Divine Shield across all your minions. Like, if you're going Murlocs, it's amazing. You can give Murlocs Divine Shield with the Megasaur, but it's difficult to roll a Megasaur, and then it's also difficult to roll Divine Shield. So he's very good. I also quite like that he improves Beasts, because Beasts generally don't get Divine Shields at all, apart from Amalgams, obviously. So if you're going Beasts, he can actually help you to even win, because Beasts aren't top tier, but with Divine Shield, they suddenly become so much better. So I like him, but the reason why he's one of the worst heroes is he only has 40 health, just like most of the other heroes. And he doesn't do anything in the early game to help you, so you can just get smoked out of the game. And that's why it's quite difficult to pick George. I still think he's good, though. I like picking him. You just have to. He doesn't help you get. He doesn't help you smooth out the RNG of a bad board roll. If you don't get the right minions, you will die. So George is one of those ones you either see him go out 7th or 8th, or you kind of see him finish 1st or 2nd. So that's why he's a difficult one to pick, but I'm still going to put him quite high. So I'm going to put George in the B category. He's not amazing, but obviously his hero power is one of the strongest if you can make it to the top 4. Alright, now let's look at Nefarian, which is very similar to George, I would say, in the respect. I think Nefarian's better than George, but if you make it into the top 4, Nefarian is amazing because Divine Shields are so powerful, and all of a sudden your opponent doesn't have them anymore. You just 1 gold, hit that hero power every turn. I mean, once you make it past sort of like turn 10, I would say, even maybe before that, you want to be hitting this hero power every single turn just to get rid of those Divine Shields. It ruins mechs because of their Kobold Guardians. If your opponent's smart, they'll realign their minions so the Kobold Guardian comes after another mech dies, so it still gets its Divine Shield back, but then they're having to reposition it. It plays with all their plans and makes them just worse. So Nefarian is very good, especially if you go Divine Shields yourself, because you have them and they don't. So Nefarian is very strong, but again, it doesn't impact too much in the early game. He impacts a lot more than George, though. So I think he's a better hero to pick than George. He's one of the strongest when you get to the top 4. But he's not one of the strongest to get you to the top 4. So for that reason, I'm going to give him a B as well. But I think he's better than George. So we'll put him over there. Next, let's look at Finley. And this is a fairly easy one. Unfortunately, Finley is one of the worst heroes for me. So I'm going to be putting him down at the bottom. His hero power, give a minion +1/+1 for 1 gold, is okay. It refreshes every time you sell a minion. Now, we talked about how good Vancleef is because you can give buffs to every time you buy a minion. Activating Finley's is just so much harder. And if you refresh it, great, but then you have to spend another gold just to give +1/+1. So, whereas Vancleef, realistically, you can give a minion 3/3 in certain turns for 1 gold. For Finley to do that, you'd have to spend 3 gold. He's just not very good. I just would never pick him, to be honest. Put him in the bottom category for me. Dancing Daryl. Dancing Daryl's a fun hero to play as. He's a really good one. He's difficult to play because you need to know when you're going in and when you're going to dance and when you're going to buff minions. But if you get the right minions on the board, like if you see a Kobold Guardian, buff that as much as you can. If you see a Hydra, buff that. Amalgams, buff them. Same with Security Rover, buff them. If you can get that right and you can get lots of tokens, which are good to sell and throw the hats on the minions, then he can be really good. But you need to do it properly and not be too greedy with when you're throwing the hats, because you still need a certain amount of minions on the board. So he is a very good hero, but not one of the top tier ones. So I'm going to put Daryl in the B category. I'll probably put him behind Nefarian and in front of George, to be honest. So let's put him there. Next Sylvanas. Sylvanas is one of the new heroes, and you know, this is open to interpretation. It's only just come out, so I haven't played a ton of games with Sylvanas, but I think she's quite difficult to play and difficult to get a good benefit out of, because she gives adjacent minions +1/+1 and removes the minion in the middle. So you don't get a gold. It's not like you can sell it and you get a gold. It just disappears. So you lose. The hero power costs 0, but you lose 1 gold because you don't get to sell that minion. It buffs the side minions +1/+1. So it's a very powerful early game effect, but you losing a minion in the early game is quite difficult to do. So if you don't roll the tokens, so if you like the Murloc that summons a 1/1 or the Beast that summons a 1/1, then getting rid of a minion to give adjacent ones +1/+1 can be very painful. And then in the late game, the buff potentially isn't enough. So although Sylvanas does have quite a nice effect, I don't think she's actually that strong. So I'm going to be putting her here in the D category. I'm going to put her ahead of Patchwork and Toki though. But yeah, I'll probably have to play some more. Maybe you could put her higher on the list. But for me, for now, I don't think she's very strong. Next, we've got the Lich King. Lich King is an interesting one. A very cheap hero power, only 1 gold, but can actually have some very good effects. Especially if you get the late game, you get the Gas Coiler. 1 mana to summon another one of those is very good. It would be much more powerful if you could put it on the left-hand side, because then your King McGurgle you could resummon, your Hydras, all that sort of stuff. But it is the right-hand side minion, so really you want to be going with strong death rattles. So it can be good. In the early game, it can also be okay if you get a decent death rattle. So for that reason, I'm going to put him in the C category. But again, one of the heroes that you're not upset if you get him, but you don't really want to be looking for him in the picks. Yogg is very good. I like playing with Yogg. He is very strong in the early game. Turn 1, hit your hero power, and you get a buffed minion. Now, as long as you don't get a 1/1 minion, you should make it through the first 2 rounds at full health. So that is effectively giving you +5 health. That's pretty strong. And then if you level up on 2, then on turn 3 you've got 5 gold, which means you can buy 2 minions, 1 with your hero power and 1 for 3 gold, and that sets your board up. You've got 2 buffed minions, and you've also got a strong board, and then you can just snowball from there. And you can see if you're winning these games over and over again, it just sees how much your health just stays at 40, how much that adds up. Because if you've lost the 2 games because you got 2 first games because you picked up a token and then played people who've got buffed minions, then you're already 5 health down, and then it can just snowball. So I like Yogg. I've won a lot of games with Yogg as well. It's a good early game impactor, his hero power. So I'm going to put him up here. And I'm going to put him behind Vancleef and probably ahead of the Curator, I would say. I still like playing the Curator, but I would put Yogg there for sure. Next, let's take a look at Akazamzarak. A really interesting one. 2 mana and 2 gold hero power. Discover a random secret. Yes, Ice Block is incredible, but he has recently nerfed. So they've nerfed the consistency of getting Ice Block in a row, 2 times in a row. So if your Ice Block gets triggered, you go back to the tavern, you press it again, get another Ice Block. It can be really annoying for opponents to play against. Apparently they've nerfed it. I really don't know how often it comes about now, Ice Block, etc. But Splitting Image is there, still another strong one. But I don't like Akazamzarak so much. He can be good if you get Ice Block, but then there's no guarantee you hit it, and you have to spend 2 gold. And if you don't get Splitting Image and you don't get Ice Block, some of them are a bit lame. So I'm going to put him here. I'll put him ahead of Toki though, in the D category. Next we've got Bran. Bran is very good. I actually really enjoy playing Bran as well. He's quite easy to rate. You put him up here next to Vancleef. Maybe you could even do this, switch it this way. Yeah, I think I will. I love playing as Bran because battle cries are very strong anyway. There's lots of early game battle cries you can get, so getting a +1/+1 buff, that it helps you to get through those first couple of games, like I said, maybe at full health. Then you get more battle cries that buff minions, because you always want to be doing that. You want to be getting the minions that give other minions +2/+2. And then you just get randomly +1/+1 on the board as well. So Bran is very strong. He helps you in the early game. Very, very important. Once you get into the top 4, he doesn't really add too much. Like 1/1 every time you play battle cry doesn't add too much in the late game. But getting you into that top 4 is really, really important. And with Bran, I think if you get him, you've got a very good chance of getting top 4. So I quite like playing Bran, and I'm going to put him as an A. Next, we've got Lich Basil, which again is quite difficult to rate. You can win games with Lich Basil. Her hero power is really powerful. 0 mana, deal 2 damage to yourself, and get a coin. Now that's pretty good, because the coin's free when you play it. Obviously, you just get an extra gold. But the problem is you need to play this balancing act of your health. Do you want to lose too much health? And you know, if you play it wrong and you take too much damage, then you can end up just dying, because there's no point taking a bunch of damage, getting loads of coins, leveling up really fast, and getting to higher tiers and just dying. Because if you haven't got a board that's strong enough, you will get smoked down very quickly. So you need to balance it with having a good board, taking damage from your hero power, but not taking damage from your opponents. So it's quite difficult to play. But she can be quite good. I still wouldn't put her that high though. So I am going to put her in the C category. Probably behind AFK. There is where I would put her. I still don't think going Demons is very strong. She has very good synergies with the Floating Watcher, like I said. But that has, for me, hasn't changed the meta of the game enough, the Floating Watcher. I don't think it's been particularly crazy going into the game at tier 3. So until Demons become better, I don't think she'll be very good. Next, we've got Sindragosa. Sindragosa is fun to play, pretty good effect, but I'm going to put her as a B category. The reason I put her in the B category is that she really it helps the early game buffs. Like I said, helps to push you into the mid game. Once you get in solid mid game, then you can progress into the late game. And you know, buying a minion on turn 1, then freezing the 2 minions, leveling up on the second 2, freezing those minions again, going into turn 3 and buying one of those buff minions, freezing again, turn 4, buying 2 of the buff minions. It really does help set you up. You need to get lucky a little bit with some of the minions that you're freezing. But yeah, I really like playing a Sindragosa. It's nice early game buffs to help you push you into the mid game. Doesn't do a lot in the late game, doesn't do hardly anything, to be honest. It's not a hero power you can use if you see like a security rover. You can't freeze it for 5 turns just to get a big buff on that. It just doesn't work that way. So it's good to buff your early game minions to push you into that later tier. So I like Sindragosa, so I'll put her on the B tier. Next, we have got Maleficent Manastorm, who has recently got a nerf, actually quite a big nerf. So I don't think she is as good anymore. Mechs aren't as strong for 1, and for 2, the health on mechs is quite important. We're still getting attack buffs, which is nice because mechs would have Divine Shield a lot, so the attack buffs are still quite relevant. In the early game, it's quite nice to get a Divine Shield minion with a buff. So she's still okay, but I would put her as a C tier minion, probably ahead of these other 3. It's just okay at the moment. Quite balanced, I would say, actually. It's quite a good nerf to her. Next, we've got Elise, and although Elise is quite a fun hero to play, and I do quite like her effect of when you level up to a tier, you get a minion from that tier, I don't think she's very good. Basically, spending 3 gold to discover a minion is quite nice, but you're not guaranteed to get anything good out of that discover a minion. Sometimes it's better just to roll and try and get the minion that way. So although she can be quite nice at times, it's not a very good hero. So I'm going to put her in the bottom, well, not the bottom, the D category. She's okay though. I think I would put her probably in between Sylvanas and Patchwork, or whatever this guy's name is. Next, we've got Rag, and Rag is another interesting one because the hero power dealing 8 damage to 2 enemies is very strong. It costs 2 gold though, so that's quite expensive to spend in the mid game. You don't want to use this in the early game because you need to be spending that gold on minions, but in the mid game it can actually help you to win games. Like just straight off the bat, you just press this button and you've won. And that can be quite powerful to help you overcome some bumps in perhaps your board not being strong enough. But investing that 2 gold does kind of conflict with you trying to build your board, so you need to be quite careful with it. Going into the top 4, it's quite nice because it can remove divine shields. It can also snipe mama bears, or junk bots, etc. But this is quite a rare occurrence, so it's not something to rely on. But I do quite like playing as Rag at times, so I'm going to put him here in the C category, probably at the end of it. Not the best hero, but you can definitely make good use of him if you use your hero power at good times. Next we've got Shotwalker, and Shotwalker I don't think is very good. Triggering your battle cries twice is excellent, but the 2 mana to only do it on 1 battle cry a turn, not worth it. You need to be looking for Brand Bronzebeard. Again, forcing you to go into pogo hoppers just isn't worth it. So I would put him as one of the bottom D category heroes. Spending 2 mana on that for me just isn't strong enough. And the final hero is the Rat King. Now the Rat King was one of the best heroes for a long time. Basically because he gives you heroes +1/+2 to minions for each of the tribes, and it rotates each turn. The problem is there's a lot of RNG in terms of when that happens. So turn 1 you always get beasts, but maybe you don't get beasts on the board, so you pick whatever's the best one there. Then you level up the next turn, you go into turn 3 and you roll Murlocs, but there's no Murlocs on the board, and it can get really frustrating. However, if you did get beasts on turn 1 and you did get whatever came on turn 3, suddenly your board is massive and you're really strong. And it's a powerful early game play that I think is so important, and it pushes you forward. So Rat King, although it's been nerfed now to +1/+1 rather than +1/+2, I still think is pretty good, and I'm going to put him up here in the B category, probably behind Nefarian like that. George and Nefarian have definitely been nerfed since they haven't been nerfed officially, but with the introduction of more heroes to impact the early game, I definitely think Nefarian and George have been nerfed, which is why I think I'd put them slightly lower down. You could even consider bringing George down further, to be honest. Maybe putting him in the C category. But I think I'm quite happy with this list. You guys will have to let me know what you think. Obviously, it's open to interpretation. Everyone has their own experiences with each hero. And like I said, some games you will just win with no matter which hero you pick. But I think this is decent. If you get Refarm, just pick him. He's insane. If you get any of these 5, pick them as well. You know, Bran, Vancleef, Yogi, and Curator are also very, very strong in my opinion. So I love this game. I think it's been really brilliantly done. The way that they're rolling out updates is really cool. Rotating the heroes is nice. So maybe I'll do another one of these tier lists once we get a few more heroes. But for now, this is what I've got. Let me know what you think. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.